Every once in a while I like to do a little bit of tactical stuff with you guys, but for the most part I like to do the survival stuff more than anything because the tactical stuff is still kind of my day job. But anyway, we were talking about, ghillie suit construction and whether or not people would be interested in that. So I thought that, and also I promised Alan Kay last time I was with him that I would do a video on, some of the modifications, some of the little tips and tricks, some of the things that I did with my ghillie suit. So Alan, hope you're watching, buddy, and hope you're safe where you're at. We miss you, brother, and can't wait for you to get back. But this is the video on what I did for my actual ghillie suit. Let's talk about that real quick. So, a lot of what you see out there, and especially if you're watching Hollywood, you see what I call the ghillie Wookiee. You look like Chewbacca out there. And, honestly, when I see somebody that has just this massive, ghillie suit, what I see is somebody that doesn't understand the principles of what that ghillie suit is supposed to be doing for them. When you think about from a tracker's perspective or a sniper's perspective, visual indicators, these are the things that are going to get you found, right? Those visual indicators are shine, shape, shadow, silhouette, surface, also, texture, surface texture, color and contrast with your background, and of course movement is the biggest thing. With the ghillie suit, what you're trying to do is out of those visual indicators, you're trying to reduce or alter those visual indicators so that it allows you to hide. You're not necessarily trying to turn yourself into a bush. You're trying to prevent the shine. You're trying to change the shape up to where it's an irregular shape rather than, this perfect profile. The shadow, you're trying to create shadows where there shouldn't be shadows, and you're trying to, get rid of shadows where they are. Silhouette. This is one of the things that gets me about these large, bushy ghillie suits is if you increase your silhouette, you're actually making it easier for people to find you because you've got a larger signature. So one of the things that generally sets people apart from the sniper course that I went to versus some of the other sniper courses, all great courses, but what I see is just the way that they construct their ghillie suits a lot of times defeats the purpose because they're actually increasing their signature with all that material. So that's the ghillie Wookiee, look, the Chewbacca look that I was talking about in the campfire when we were all talking. So those are things that you're trying to change. And of course, the color and contrast doesn't matter as much as you think it does. I've got a ghillie suit that I made that I used in the desert. And these desert colors still work in woodland environments. It's not so much that, that's one part of many parts of why people are seen. It's not always color. Of course you wouldn't make, you wouldn't wear a white ghillie suit or a black ghillie suit or, a bright survival orange, emergency orange ghillie suit. That's kind of not the point. But what I'm saying is natural colors are natural colors, and natural colors are found in the environment in many different environments, and it goes across many different climates. So that's not as important. But what we do want to do is we want to obviously decrease any shine we have. We want to change the shape. We want to add texture and surface. We want to decrease the, we want to not increase our silhouette more than we have to. We want to create shadows and texture where there weren't any, so that when the light hits us, it hits us and it looks like something completely different. If a light hits a flat surface, it reflects and shows that. That's what we pick up visually with our eye. If it's textured and the light is hitting it different, you have shadows, it breaks up exactly what you're looking at and makes things harder to see. That's what I'm getting at. Anyway, so let me show you real quick mine, and then I'll talk about some materials and show you some kind of little modifications that I made to mine. Before I do that, if you're just joining us, one of the ways that we're able to get this information out to people, and one way that you guys can help, and we'd appreciate it if you guys, like this video, comment below, let me know where you're watching from, ask me a question, whatever you want to do. But those comments and those likes, and especially those shares, sharing it out to your folks, is what makes this, something that Facebook puts in front of people. And I think we all know that, Facebook limits people's posts. But anyway, if you guys could do that, I really appreciate it, and it really increases the audience and it gets this out to more people. But anyway, I'll show you mine real quick. Now basically I use a 3-piece ghillie suit, so, and I don't always use them all the time, but one of the biggest visual indicators for a human silhouette is this part right here. You've got your head and then it goes out to your shoulders. So that's something that you always want to break up. So there's times in stocks that I've done to where I wear nothing but a hat, because this breaks up that human head pattern and it breaks up that head to shoulder line right here. And mine's a little bit different, and I'll go into this a little bit later, but you can see this is not all that bushy. But that's my hat. Then sometimes, you know, I might go from, depending on the vegetation, I might go to a, you know, a hat with also, you know, just having a top. And this isn't really all that bushy if you look at it. It's not that much bigger than a regular shirt, but the pattern, the outline is broken up. So that's the top. And then, you know, if I'm really trying to be sneaky, like going across the field of grass and stuff like that, I'll actually wear the pants. Honestly, you know, if you're good at your stalking techniques and using micro terrain and using, you know, the terrain to your advantage, you don't have to have a ghillie suit. This isn't something that you have to disappear in the woods. Hunters have been disappearing in the woods for, you know, hundreds and thousands of years. The point is if you do want to do this, at least, you know, some of these tips hopefully will help you do it right, and not, you know, get that big ghillie wookie look going. But anyway, so that's my ghillie suit. And basically the materials you need if you want to make one for yourself is, you know, obviously for a hat, I like to use boonie caps. This one's actually a desert boonie cap, just because I couldn't find my woodland one anywhere. But desert boonie cap, it doesn't have that base. You can see this is a perfect shape. This is shadow. You know, this is a perfect outline. This is a lot more irregular, so I like to use these when I'm trying to hide. So boonie cap is a great thing to start with. Then your base, like your base uniform or BU, like this is an old battle dress uniform. This is a woodland pattern. This is pretty good for anywhere around here, but like I said, I can also get away with a desert anywhere around here. So you're starting with a uniform, you know, some sort of fatigues, I guess you could call them back in the day. But anyway, so we'll get into some modifications to make on these, but this is your baseline pattern. It already has some irregularities built into it, the very nature of the camouflage. So this is a good thing to start with. They're very durable. One thing I will mention about this is I always go about 1 to 2 sizes larger than I actually am. And the reason being is if I'm doing, you know, some sort of operation in the summer, yeah, I need to be I'm not going to have a lot of stuff under it, but if I'm doing something in the wintertime when it's cold, I need to have room underneath this, you know, to put some sort of warm layer on, some insulating layer. So that allows me to have room for extra stuff underneath, and I'm not just, you know, limited to this as if this is my, you know, my regular uniform. So anyway, I always like to go oversized with these, so that's one thing to think about when you're making your ghillie suit. It also allows you to, you know, if you're doing things in January, it allows you to account for all that holiday weight you put on if you need to do an operation in January. So another good thing to think about. You're also going to need, you know, some sort of netting for the way I make it. And understand that there's a lot of different ways that you can make these. This is just the way I do it. So if this goes against what you've been taught or what you've learned or how you do it, you know, don't take it personal at all. This is just how I roll. But anyway, this is just some net. This is a nice neutral, natural color. It's really strong, so pre-made net, I'll use that. I've even used, I don't know if you guys have seen these, but I've even used these pocket survival hammocks, and because they're so cheap. And I can take that and use that as the net that I use, and I'll show you how that's used here in a little bit. But one thing I will say about these is you can see that shine. You know, it's not as good as that kind of drab looking net that I was showing you before, but it will work because it's not going to be showing all that much. You can always hit it with spray paint too, to kind of a flat spray paint in a natural color, and you can dull that right down. But anyway, I use those sometimes for the net. All depends on what you got. Then the main material you're going to use is a burlap or a jute. Now, yeah, so if you're using these big strips of burlap, it's a lot cheaper to buy it this way. And this you just fold out. It's basically the same thing a sandbag's made out of, but you get this in different colors, natural colors. But when you cut it off into strips, obviously you'd want a longer strip, but you can see you've got vertical and you've got horizontal fibers. So once you actually tie this on, you actually got to take out all of those horizontal fibers like that. So it can make an already laborious process, a time-consuming process, even longer, because you're taking all that out, because you just want the long strips left on there. So what you can do is you can get pre-dyed jute twine that's already separated like that. Bunch of different colors. Key thing with this is don't set any sort of pattern whatsoever. So I'll take a handful of locks of one color, a handful of the other, maybe 4 or 5 strands of each, and then I'll put that together and tie it onto the netting. But anyway, that's so you can see, what I've got going on there. This is the easiest way to do it because it's already been stripped. Works really well. What else can I show you here real quick? This right here, this is obviously a desert pattern, but this is a pretty tight weave. Kind of like a sniper veil, kind of a netting. And I'll show you what I use that for here in a little bit when I show you my ghillie suit. But I like to use that. I'll show you real quick what I use that for actually while it's fresh in my mind. So whenever I make mine, especially in the southeast or in the desert where I was using this most of the time, it gets really hot. This is a lot of insulated material on this, and you can't really, well, you might be able to see it, but you can see it's got a little see-through patch right there. What this does is I take a big section out of the back of that, and of course I sew the seams to where it's nice, but I'll sew that netting in there so that it allows a place on my back when I'm crawling across the ground. It allows a place for heat to escape from my back. So that's what I use that for, is to kind of cut down on the amount of heat that this actual insulated material traps inside, and it keeps me cooler while I'm doing my socks. Make sense? All right, so that's what I use that for. Let's see, what else? Oh, here's another modification that you can do. This is just the leg of a BDU bottom, and what you can do is you can take that and you cut it off, and then you sew the bottom together. So what I've essentially made is a pouch. But what fits in this pouch is a camelback bladder. So yeah, BDU is a battle dress uniform. It's the trouser, it's a pant leg, from the uniform. So I sew that together, and I basically made a lightweight camelback bladder or hydration bladder carrier that I can also sew inside my ghillie suit. And this is one that I'm using for one that I'm making now. It's not in this one, but you sew it on the inside and it rests right up against your back. So something to think about. That's another modification you can make. Little camelback bladder. Now let's take a look at, this is a military sleeping mat, closed cell foam. When you're a sniper or when you're in a ghillie suit, you spend a lot of time on your belly crawling. So it's a good idea to not only reinforce the front of your chest and your hips and your thighs while you're crawling, but it's another good idea to, when you're laying on the cold ground for hours and hours and hours waiting on that shot, you need to insulate yourself from conduction. So you'll get freezing cold if you lay directly on the ground. So show you what I do with these. And the new uniforms, this is kind of an old school thing, I know. The new uniforms, they come with knee pads and elbow pads that insert right inside. Same principle, it's closed cell foam. Put some padding on your elbows, put some padding on your chest, put some padding on your legs, your thighs, and your knees, so that when you're crawling across the ground, you don't get beat up when you go over a rock. And it also allows you to, protect you from conduction when you're laying against the ground, losing all your body heat. I'll show you kind of what that looks like on a pair that I'm making now. This is a woodland pair that I'm working on. Again, super oversized. But if you look at the front, you'll see that I've got reinforced canvas, and then I've got some of that closed cell foam right here on the knees. Now, let me see if I can get you a good shot of this. What I did with this is I sewed the canvas over top of that. The knee pad is on the inside, and this gives me basically like a skid plate. It gives me a surface that's going to wear a lot slower than if I just left, you know, the thin BDU material, the thin uniform material wear out quickly when you're going across the ground. So you reinforce it with canvas, and then I put that pad in there and I sew it all together. Once I sew all that together, I'll cover the thread with some shoe goo. I'll cover the thread with shoe goo so that as I'm crawling across the ground and across rocks and thorns and branches and such, it doesn't wear that thread out and then make this, you know, come apart. Then, because this shoe goo is shiny, you can see, maybe if I can get the light to hit it right, you can see the shoe goo is kind of shiny, maybe not, I can't really tell. I'll hit that with some spray paint too, some flat spray paint to take that shine off of that, because that's another visual indicator that I don't want to have on there. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing with that padding, and you'll see on my other one. Another great thing, where did I get the canvas? Military duffel bags. A lot of us have a lot of these laying around. All I did was cut out the pattern from this. This is a real heavy duty waterproof canvas, or sometimes nylon, but it's a reinforced patch. Then when I wear this out, you know, 10 years from now, when this patch wears out, I can break the threads on that and I can put a new patch over that, or I can just leave it and put a patch directly over top of that, and I'm good to go. I don't have to build a whole new ghillie suit, if that makes sense. So anyway, that's where I got all that. Couple other things. Military suspenders. This is a great thing to have, because when you're wearing an issue belt, when you're in a ghillie suit and you're crawling across the ground, that belt buckle is pushing, you know, up against your stomach the whole time you're dragging. So if you use these old military style suspenders, that puts the little clips in the buckles on your hips, and you're not actually leaning on that while you're crawling. So this is just another comfort thing to think about. So yeah, anyway, I talked to you guys about the shoe goo. This is a really heavy duty thread that I use sometimes, and I would use what's dirty? I'd use a canvas needle. That's never going to focus, but anyway, it's a canvas needle or a glover's needle, whatever you want to call it. That's what you'll use with some heavy duty thread. This is basically the same thickness as the gut from paracord, from 550 cord. The inner strands is about that same thickness. So that's good for sewing. Another great thing to use is this wax thread that comes with my Speedy Stitcher. I sew everything with this thing, and I carry it with me when I go out in the field. It's in my kit. But I sew my leather with it, sew my canvas. I can repair rucksacks with this. I can repair anything at all with this, and it contains the thread inside this handle. So if you've never checked these out, the Speedy Stitcher Sewing Awl is incredible. But it's got a wax thread that comes with it. This is what it looks like. You can use that, and it's real quick to sew your netting onto your actual ghillie suit. Makes it really nice. Some other things that you'll need. It's disappeared, but paracord you'll need. I'll show you that. And then I like this. It's about a 1/2 inch tubular nylon, and I'll show you where that goes to. You can also use, if you can get a 1/2 inch piece, some 1/2 inch elastic bands. But anyway, I'll show you where all that comes into play. I just want to make sure I hit everything that I used to make this one. Last but not least, a ghillie suit is basically a walking tinder bundle. So for the most part, you know, in wartime, you're not really, you know, in a sniper position with a campfire. But, you know, on a battlefield, you know, obviously there's definitely potential for fires to be everywhere. But on the civilian side of things, if you're going to have a ghillie suit on, just be aware of how much of a walking tinder bundle you are. So the last thing I always do for all my ghillie suits, this is it's basically called Inspect a Shield Class A Fire Retardant. So you spray this on there, and it kind of makes you less flammable and less likely to catch fire if you're running around in a ghillie suit. So always think about that. But anyway, so I think I've shown you everything here. And now I'll go into my actual ghillie suit and show you some of the things that I did for that. Maybe you'll get some ideas for your own. Let me show you my ghillie suit here real quick. So, basically what I'm doing, and you can see here, is I've got the netting. And for mine it's a little bit different. You can sew the netting directly on top of that. Or you can do what I did here. Let me see if I can get a close-up on that and get the light on there. So what I've done is I actually sewed paracord to the actual boonie cap, all right? And then I take that paracord and I tie a square knot with 2 overhands securing that. I use that to tie the actual netting to my actual ghillie suit. Put a dollop of shoe glue on any of your threads. That way you don't wear those out and it doesn't come apart on you. And then if you use this, remember it's shiny, so you got to hit that with some spray paint to doll it back up again. All right, so once you've got that netting on there, then you take a couple of handfuls of this jute. Like I was telling you earlier, you take a couple of strands of each color, and then you're just going to take those, not setting any sort of pattern whatsoever, and just tie those onto the netting. I like to use a girth hitch usually, which you don't know what a girth hitch is. You just make a loop, then that goes around, and then you kind of pull everything through that. I've also heard it called a lark's head, but it looks like that. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I use for that. And then once you get it, reasonably coated without making it too bushy, then you can see here, I've got these rubber bands attached to it everywhere. Because I'm here to tell you right now, from experience, that the jute is not your only source of camouflage, and it's never going to match your environment perfectly. What separates, a good sniper from one that's just a Chewbacca in the woods with a ghillie suit is using local natural vegetation. Those rubber bands allow me to take live foliage and quickly attach it to my ghillie suit on all different locations so that I'm more blending in with the surroundings. So that's another step, is to always have rubber bands all over the place on these so that you can put natural vegetation in there really quick, because the natural vegetation is what's going to keep you from being seen. It's not the jute material. So if you see somebody that's teaching you how to build a ghillie suit, or teaching you how to stalk, or teaching you camouflage and concealment, and they have nothing but a regular jute ghillie suit, guess what they look like in the field? They look like a big piece of jute out in the field. Natural vegetation is the difference. So if they teach you that way, run away. Just keep running. Don't look back. Just run. So anyway, now check this out. If you look at my hat from the inside, what I'm trying to do with this is, and you look here, let me see if I can show you. My veil is actually tied up. It's actually rolled up and tied. So when I get into position, I can untie that. I don't like to have it dangling because it tends to catch on briars, it tends to catch on things, and it gets in the way. But when I unroll that, I've got a veil that has just a little bit of material in there. And once I get behind the gun, I've got enough to actually go up over my rifle, so my scope would be up here. And I can see directly through that, but it breaks up the outline, breaks up the pattern. So that's how I do mine, like that. Anyway, so I actually need room for my beard. I still got enough. Yeah, so this is my face ghillie that I've been growing for about 6 months now. But anyway, that's how I do my hat, and it's basically just paracord loops sewn on one side and then sewn on the outside like that. So I can roll that up and tie it out of my way. I can walk with just that on, and it's no big deal. So yeah, that's how I do my hats. I can get away with just that hat a lot of times because most of the time, you know, I'm facing forward, you know, kind of the front towards enemy kind of thing, like a claymore. But the only thing I really need to break up is what I'm peering over the horizon with or peering around vegetation with. So I can get away with just that hat a lot of times. And, you know, it breaks up this part of the outline, which is the main giveaway for a human being. So yeah, kind of the same principle. If I want to get a little more stealthy, or if it's a little more challenging stock environment, I'll go with a top, and I'll also wear that, and I'll show you kind of some other modifications I do to this. But the same way that I do my other stuff is I've actually got it tied on the net, then tie the jute on. Nothing too crazy, don't really increase the signature all that much because like I said, I rely on natural vegetation, not a big, you know, a big Chewbacca jute suit. Yeah, I showed you that modification, you know, so the vent in the back. Then what I also do is on the front, let me show you this. On the front, I've got that same principle. I've got my skid plates, I've got my pads right there. And that allows that, you know, something that's a little more durable of a surface so that when I'm actually running around doing my thing, you know, I wear this out, I can repatch this and not have to worry about rebuilding an entire suit. If you notice though, a normal uniform has a pocket here and a pocket here on both sides. So I take those pockets off because I can no longer reach them. They're not doing me any good whatsoever. I take the smaller pockets, the smaller upper pockets, and I sew them onto the sleeves underneath. So that way I've got stuff that I can get to pretty easily. Even if I'm laying down, I can still pull things out of that pocket. That could be my binoculars, it could be, you know, a sketchbook, it could be a lot of things. But then I take the bottom pockets that are larger and I actually sew them on the inside. You can see them right here, I think. Sew them on the inside right here. So I've got to kind of reach up to get in there, but it's just like, you know, in a business jacket, you've got pockets in there. What I keep in there normally, and these are still in there from, you know, I don't know how many years ago, but what I keep in there normally, big old ball of rubber bands, because I'm going to be getting into location. I'll get my last cover concealed. Hey Chris, what's going on, buddy? Yeah, so what I'll do is use this so that I have extra ones so that when I go to actually do my my natural veg, I always have enough rubber bands. If I break one, I can replace it real quick. So that's what I keep in there. And then of course you can keep other things in here as well. But those are modifications I do to that. Oh, a couple other keys to the top. This is the elbow pad, also reinforced and padded. And then down here, this is where I like to use the elastic over the tubular nylon, but you can do tubular nylon. Right here is a thumb loop, and it's on both sides, but that allows me to, when I put this on, I can put the I put those thumb loops over, and it keeps my sleeves down so that when I'm crawling, the sleeves don't ride up, you know, to an area of my skin that might not be camouflaged well. So it keeps everything in place so that I can crawl around without it, you know, going up. But anyway, so if you put those on there, that's what that's for, those thumb loops. The other thing that works great, especially if you've got to crawl back out of your firing position, is, let me see if I can get this on the camera. If you look on the inside on the bottom, on both sides, I think you can almost see that. On both sides, I've got about, I don't know, that's probably 2 feet of paracord that come off the back. You know, about midline of each butt cheek is where it would go. And then on the front, I have a corresponding paracord loop sewn in. So whenever I put that on, the actual 2-foot tails are dangling behind me, and I actually will reach down and pull them forward in front of me, put them through that loop, and I can tie them. And that keeps the bottom of my ghillie suit down where I want it. So even if I'm crawling forward or backwards, that suit won't ride up on me, if that makes sense. So those are key, I think, And they're really great, especially when you're getting out of position, is to be able to tie that, you know, down. It almost looks like a Swiss seat when you're done, if you know what I'm talking about. Whenever you build this and you get your netting on, you get your jute, before you go putting rubber bands and all that, once you get it to how you want it, it's going to look way too nice and new, and it's not going to blend with the natural surroundings. So what I did with mine, believe it or not, is I found a nasty mud hole. I threw it down in there and I just stomped it into the mud. Then after I stomped it in the mud, I pulled it out soaking wet, and I took a piece of paracord and I tied it up, and I drug it behind a four-wheeler through the woods, on gravel roads, on pavement. I drug it through everything. Every mud hole I could find. I mean, I literally drug this thing around for about, I don't know, 5-6 miles probably. And then I just laid it out and let it dry naturally, and I've never ever cleaned it. What that does is that, I mean, you can probably see, you know, it's got different colors embedded in it. It's got, you know, oils in it. It's got probably some paint residue on it. It's got mud. It's got clay. It's got dirt. It's got everything, and that makes it blend in a lot better. And what dragging it behind that four-wheeler did was, while that jute was wet, it really frayed it up nicely, you know, so it doesn't look new. That's the key, is I want it to look like nothing. I don't want it to look like jute. I want it to look like nothing. So I hope that answered your question, but I've never ever washed it, ever. And actually, the dirtier it gets, the more it blends in with the woods, if you think about it. So let me see. I think that's all the modifications and all the little tips and tricks I have for the top. I didn't really wear the bottoms all that much, but I'll show you how I do them. For the bottoms, you know, I start basically from there down. I don't really need, you know, a lot of material up here because that's covered by the top. And again, I'm not trying to increase my silhouette by putting more material on there. So I kind of started, you know, basically right under the shorts line on down. And that's another key to that you'll notice on my ghillie suit, is the front doesn't have jute on it, because like I said, a sniper is normally, if he's in a position where he's going to be when he's going to be spotted, he's going to be on the ground in the prone, you know, so you should be sneaking by that point. So having material on the front doesn't make any sense, really. So again, same kind of pattern. Let's see if I can get the light a little better. With the canvas reinforcement, this one actually has a pocket so I can replace the knee pads on here, but it's got the knee pads in there. The pockets are sewn back over that canvas, but you could just as easily cut that out. That was just because it was easier to sew in a straight line and put that back on. You don't have to do it that way. Then down at the bottom, I have stirrups. This is another piece of elastic. I have stirrups on this that'll go up underneath the heel of my boot, and it keeps my pant legs down when I'm crawling backwards. So that's another key modification, I think, to make on your ghillie suit. So yeah, you can see, you might be able to see, you can see that's all, you know, dirty, you know, clay and everything else that was ground in there from when I was dragging it through the mud and behind a four-wheeler for a long time. Anyways, so I think that's all I wanted to share with you guys, kind of how I make my ghillie suit, some of the tips and tricks, some of the modifications I make, why I did it that way, some of the materials I used. Hopefully you guys will take this if you're wanting to build a ghillie suit. Hopefully you'll make it, you know, hopefully you learn something to where you can make it better and make it work for you. But the key is, you know, the visual indicators. That's your shine, which is obviously taken care of, your shape, your shadow, your silhouette, your surface, creating that texture so that it reflects light differently than a human would, and then of course color contrast. The other big thing is movement. Ghillie suit doesn't do anything for you for that. Check out our YouTube channel, check out our Facebook group, our actual group page, and we look forward to seeing you guys